response plan for this room before we... So in an emergency, everyone must evacuate through the nearest safe exit. Those seated in the gallery will take direction from security, and council will take direction from the meeting clerk. After evacuating the room, please proceed to a stairwell, take the stairs to ground level, and evacuate the building through the doors marked emergency exit and go to the muster point. Do not take an elevator or walk through the city room. Anyone with limited mobility should identify themselves to security or the meeting clerk, and please speak with security or the meeting clerk if you require first aid. Thank you.
Just give it 30 seconds. Well, good morning, everyone. I would like to call this meeting to order. This is the first Special Infrastructure Committee meeting. And at this time, I would like to acknowledge that we meet on the traditional land of Treaty 6 territory and the Métis homeland, and acknowledge the diverse Indigenous peoples whose ancestors' footsteps have marked this territory for centuries, such as Cree, Dene, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Gora, Iska, as well as Métis and Inuit, now settlers from around the world. We'll do a roll call of committee members. Councillor Cartmel.
Good morning.
Councillor Hamilton.
Good morning.
Councillor Jans.
Good morning.
And Councillor Salvador.
Good morning.
All right, so we are here. First order of the business is to select the vice chair of this committee. Councillor Salvador has shown interest in being the vice chair. Have you heard any other interest?
I have not.
Okay. Okay, would someone like to
I'll
move?
nominate Councillor Salvador.
Okay. Councillor Salvador, do you accept the nomination?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other nominations, please? Seeing none, I call nominations closed. Can I get a motion to appoint Councillor Salvador as vice chair of the Special Infrastructure Committee? I'll move that. Okay, please vote.
I'm a yes.
Thank you, Councillor Jens.
Yes, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. Councillor Salvador has been elected as the vice chair. Okay. Adoption of the agenda. Councillor Salvador, you want to do that?
Yeah, I'll move adoption of the June 20th, 2025 Special Infrastructure Committee meeting agenda.
Okay, please vote.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Jens.
Yes, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. Protocol items. There are a couple of protocol items that I will read into the record. I will start with there you go. Canadian Multiculturalism Day. I would like to take a moment this morning to recognize that Friday, June 27th, is a Canadian Multiculturalism Day. Canadians have long understood that our many different languages, traditions, and beliefs are a source of shared strength and resilience. Canada was the first country in the world to adopt an official multiculturalism policy over 50 years ago. Additionally, Treaty 6 territory has been home to diverse Indigenous peoples for many generations, and today it is a welcoming place for people from around the world who make their homes here. This diversity has shaped Edmonton's collective identity. More than 70 different cultural groups speaking over 100 different languages make up our city's cultural landscape. Edmonton is known as a city of innovators, and multiculturalism is a springboard for development. Diverse perspectives and experiences help foster creativity and imagination across every sector. Newcomers have shared new ideas, opened local businesses, started community nonprofits, and helped build our city in countless other ways. Their contributions have helped shape the vibrant communities that make Edmonton an amazing place to live. Multiculturalism is a core part of our collective identity, and the City of Edmonton is committed to ensuring that this is a place where everyone can find a sense of belonging. As Edmonton grows, we are working to ensure our services are accessible, our communities are inclusive, and our collective potential is fully realized. Every Edmontonian helps create a welcoming city, big and small ways. Newcomers find community and connection thanks to the many organizations that have made it their mission to reach out, provide support, and foster inclusion. Our city's collective work to eradicate racism and discrimination has been driven by the leadership and collaboration of diverse community members and organizations. And every year, tens of thousands of residents and visitors gather at Edmonton's Heritage Festival, which is considered to be the largest outdoor celebration of multiculturalism in the world. Edmonton summers are full of cultural events like these. Festivals, block parties, and sharing a meal offers countless ways to connect and learn about our city's diversity. So this summer, I encourage everyone to get out and celebrate the multiculturalism that makes Edmonton so special. And the next protocol is the recognition of Indigenous Survivors Day. I want to recognize that June 30th is Indigenous Survivors Day. Indigenous peoples across Canada have endured historical injustices as a result of colonization, the 60s scoop, the residential school system, and forced assimilation. Many were forcibly removed from their homes, their families, and their communities under the mandate of colonial programs and initiatives. Today, we honor the resilience and strength of all Indigenous survivors who have persevered through historical traumas, racism, discrimination, and marginalization. This day helps us raise awareness, spur dialogue, foster understanding, and advocate for reconciliation, support, and healing for Indigenous survivors, their descendants, and communities. Although we have come a long way, we must acknowledge the ongoing legacy of colonialism and the results, challenges, and traumas that Indigenous survivors still face. Together, we help preserve, protect, and celebrate the diverse Indigenous cultures, knowledge, and histories of this land. City of Edmonton reaffirms our commitment to building strong relationships with First Nations and Indigenous neighbors and working together to create a more inclusive and equitable city. I encourage residents to take this opportunity to reflect on the experience of Indigenous survivors and to recognize their ongoing efforts in healing and reconciliation. Thank you. All right. Select items for debate. I will select the 3.2. Are they 3.2, 3. There's different items, right? They're all
different
separate items, right?
Different items, but 3.2 and 3.3 request to deal with them together.
3.2 and 3.3 will be done together?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll select both. Anyone else? We have speakers on 3.1. So Councillor Salvador, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll select 3.1.
3.1. Councillor Cartmel?
3.4, please.
3.4. Got it. So everything is selected, nothing to vote on.
That's correct.
We have a number of speakers on different items. On 3.1, we have Ron Glenn and David Johnson. And 3.2, 3.3, we have Lindsay Butterfield, Susan Keating, Jacob Komar, David Dodge, Peter M. Rongan, Mike Melroz, Shafraz Kaba, and Jim Sendercock. So please vote to have the members of public speak on those items.
Just waiting for one vote.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Jans. We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. We have a request for specific time on the agenda, and I think it's important to accommodate that because one of our lead city staff is unable to come in the afternoon, right, for a very legitimate reason, right?
Yes, and
which
I would
is-
say a key member of our staff for that item, yes.
Yeah, right, and key member, lead member, I said. Is it different between key and lead?
Just reinforcing the importance.
Okay,
yes.
all right. Key and lead member, we'll add both of them together. Cannot participate in the afternoon for very good reasons, and I hope we can accommodate. I also understand that we have a number of speakers on other items, so this is the balance that we would have to have. So what time would that be dealt, a second item? So we will make 3.4 the second item on the agenda. We'll see how it goes for the balance. Can someone move to have 3.4? I moved it. Okay, I moved it. Here you go. It's been moved already. Here you go. Please vote.
Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Jans. We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. Okay. All right, we are going to start with our first item, which is 3.1, Integrated Infrastructure Services Capital Projects. Verbal report. Is there a presentation or opening remarks?
Yes, there's a presentation.
Oh, go ahead, please.
Thank you. All right. Well, good morning and welcome to the First Infrastructure Committee. As a follow-up to our presentation report in February earlier this year, we're here to provide an update on the City of Edmonton's significant infrastructure projects. With me today to do that is Bruce Ferguson, Branch Manager of LRT, Pascal Ladesseur, Branch Manager of Infrastructure Planning and Design, Caitlin Zerbeski, Branch Manager of Parks and Road Services, Nicole Wolf, who's our Branch Manager of Building Great Neighborhoods, and Jason Malista, who's our Branch Manager of Infrastructure Delivery. And we're all going to flow through the presentation this morning. This presentation is intended as first of what we plan to bring updates to this committee with. So we're happy to take feedback on how this is received by you all and happy to adjust as we go forward. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge that none of this vital work that we're about to give you updates on would be possible without the support and collaboration of our industry partners. The work described here today is a reflection of partnerships with many. A few of those key members are the Edmonton Construction Association, Alberta Road Builders and Heavy Construction Association, and Consulting Engineers of Alberta, among others. Their contributions are invaluable in us achieving our city goals together. Next slide, please. So to get into a little bit of the details, since last time, we thought it would be good to highlight the complexity or the interactions of many different elements when it comes to traffic and traffic flow around our city. As you can see on the slide, capital projects are one element that we need to manage traffic around. Those are typically planned events that we can plan and really look at how we manage traffic flow around how we're executing on our capital project construction projects. Similar to that, civic events is another example where sometimes we need to restrict traffic or close down roads to accommodate those. Those are also planned events. Utility work can be both. Oftentimes we have planned utility work. Sometimes we have emergency elements related to utility work that have to happen. Private developer would be another example of planning around managing that work. And then there's events like emergency events and weather that are unpredictable and can happen unexpectedly on any part of our system. All of these things together influence and impact traffic in any given day or season, depending on the nature of it. Next slide, please. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Caitlin to give some updates on how we manage traffic overall.
So as the city grows, we continue to grow and evolve. Construction activities have absolutely increased, and we do our best to work with our partners, both within IAS, industry, as well as our public utilities, to ensure oversight and coordination of the work that's planned. There is the evolving work that Craig mentioned that also has to be factored into there. Our work is really there to support safe and accessible work sites, not only for workers, but more importantly also for public, including pedestrians, cyclists, public transit users, and motorists. This is all supported with what's called an OSCAM, which is an on-street construction maintenance permitting process, which allows for safe and efficient use of the road space. For awareness, the city issues over 10,000 OSCAM permits per year, and those are the approved permits, not what have been applied for. When we review an OSCAM permit, we really consider a bunch of factors: coordination with other construction and maintenance projects and special events. We look at the impacts to traffic flow, including emergency vehicle and transit access. We have equitable accommodation for all modes of travel, including pedestrians and cyclists through work areas. And we focus on mitigative measures to reduce impacts to travel publicly. It also includes signal timing adjustments, roadway operations changes, and restrictions to working in off-peak time periods. We also factor into the seasonality when school is in session, out of session, and we make adjustments to signal timing, as well as traffic detours to accommodate those changes in flow of traffic. The traffic disruption map, which is found on the City of Edmonton's webpage, is updated with the latest traffic impact information, and that's done to help notify the public of any detours, closures, or so that they can plan their routes. We also coordinate heavily with ETS, EPS, traffic signals team, Safe Mobility, IIS, LRT, and UPE on all active construction projects. City Operations is here to help review OSCAM permit applications and have consideration for any planned work in the near vicinity of proposed work sites to ensure the traffic impacts are minimized and mitigation measures are in place to further reduce the impacts to traffic. With a short construction window within the City of Edmonton, we do have large numbers of OSCAM permits in the downtown area. We have the majority with special events such as the Oilers playoff run. We also have maintenance and drainage activities, with also over 265 being completed since January 1st of this year. We handle both planned OSCAM closures on the road right away and additional unplanned closures to support utility emergent work and other scale construction activities as needed. We also manage license of occupations, so those are things such as public road use, mainly on weekends, for things such as the downtown farmers market, closures for events in the entertainment district, and the patio programs that allow for economic growth within the downtown. Next slide, please.
Okay, thanks, Caitlin. So now getting back to the focus of capital projects specifically, we wanted to just reinforce and highlight. In the past, we've done various things like provide memos to council quarterly on updates of how projects and status of them are going. With this new forum and infrastructure committee and these type of presentations, we thought what we'd do this time is give you some highlights and reference the public information that's available to all. So this is a screenshot of the main site of building.edmonton.ca, and it shows you currently for all of our capital projects in IS, there's 229 projects. 94% are on budget and 75% are on schedule. And you can see by the cluster on the map, there's pins for each of those projects. And on the sidebar, you can see that it includes things like facilities, open space, transportation, LRT, and utilities. When we look at this, if you were on the website and you were to select just facilities, The number of projects, the on time and on schedule, would update to reflect just those facility ones. So there's an interactive way to get current status of what's actually happening on all of our projects that we have, and this is, again, live for the public. We update this quarterly with public updates and progress of all of our projects that are ongoing. Get updated on that basis as well right now. Next slide, please. I think we might have skipped one. Thank you. So here's an example. I selected one of those projects, a transportation project. We'll get more information on this one as it turns out later. So here's an example if you were to select on one of those projects, the type of information that's provided on it. So you can see for Terwilliger Drive Expressway, it shows you how it's doing, budget, schedule, and scope. It gives you a brief description of it, and it gives you the latest update of how the project is progressing. Typically, we'll have timelines for completion on there as well as it sits. And we also often have our project manager contact information. And again, this is public information for anyone that wants to reach out and find more information about a project. So just a couple of examples, and really to reinforce, I think in the past we've had some confusion about multiple versions and ways we've presented stats around how our projects are doing. This I would call the source of truth to the public and to everyone around current status of how things are going on a quarterly basis. So just wanted to highlight that for you. Next slide, please. Now for today, what we thought we would do beyond that general information for all of our current 229 projects, we wanted to highlight and give you updates of some of the more significant projects, and that's what we're going to be going through shortly here. How we decided which projects to bring to you today was based on the projects that are in a construction phase, significant public interest projects, high traffic or high community impacts, those that are significant in relation to the downtown core or access related to it, and significant investment projects. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Bruce to begin. Next slide.
Great, thank you, Craig. The Valley Line West is now in the 4th year of construction, and Marigold Infrastructure Partners is making good progress on both Phase 1 and Phase 2 of the Accelerated Road Work and Track Work Plan. The Stony Plain Road and 124th Street intersection reopened ahead of schedule on June 11th. This was excellent progress by MIP that helped reduce the overall duration and impact of construction on traffic and businesses in the area. The work on the remainder of Phase 1 is continuing. We're making good headway on the Stony Plain Road 156th Street and Meadowlark 87th Avenue intersection. Crews are on schedule to open both intersections by mid-July. Accelerated road work along 104th Avenue between 105th Street and 121st Street is well underway. This has reduced 104th Avenue to 1 lane eastbound and 1 lane westbound and is expected to last until the end of November. Phase 2 is also kicked off with the partial closure of the Stony Plain Road 142th Street intersection. Through traffic on 142th Street at Stony Plain Road is not permitted. However, east-west traffic on Stony Plain Road is open, as is access to and from 142nd Street south of Stony Plain Road. The nearby 139th Street Y intersection has also been closed to complete remaining road work concurrent with the 142th Street intersection work. This phase also includes the partial closure of the 95 Avenue 156th Street intersection. However, this work won't commence until the work at the 156th Street and Stony Plain Road intersection is complete. In addition to the intersection work, construction is continuing on facilities, stops, and stations along the entire alignment. A significant milestone this summer is the arrival of the first light rail vehicle from Hyundai Rotem in South Korea, which is scheduled for midsummer or later in July. MIP anticipates the completion of the elevated guideway along 87th Avenue later this year. This structure and the gantry crane used to build it has really changed the landscape around Misericordia Hospital and West Edmonton Mall, and we'll be celebrating this milestone when it's achieved. Weather dependency remains a significant factor for much of this year's work. So far, crews have done a great job protecting sites from rain and continuing on their schedules. We're also closely monitoring the readiness of the Jerry Wright Operations and Maintenance Facility, as it needs to be ready to store light rail vehicles this fall. Next slide, please. For the Capital Line South Extension, Ledcor, the design-build contractor, began its first major year of construction along 111th Street earlier this year. Along the west side of 111th Street, the berm has been removed to make room for the LRT tracks, and the median in the middle of the road has been removed to improve traffic flow during construction. The plan is to have 2 traffic lanes open in each direction on 111th Street. However, there will be short periods of time when only 1 lane will be open. Between 9th and 12th Avenue, traffic has been shifted to the west side of 111th Street so Ledcor can build the new pavement roadway on the east side. Traffic will then be shifted onto this new pavement later this year, and work will start on the west side of 111th Street near the Esso gas station and the new Twin Brooks LRT station. There's also significant work happening near the intersection of 23rd Avenue and 111th Street for the LRT underpass. Piling and construction of the underpass is ongoing and will continue into next year. Work is also underway at the Lou Lawrence Operations and Maintenance Facility and the LRT bridge over Anthony Henday Drive. In terms of key risks, weather is again an important factor for crews. So far, weather has been good and construction is progressing well. A recent notable milestone for the project was the groundbreaking ceremony we held in late May. We had an excellent turnout and our Indigenous partners blessed the day and the land, which created a special connection for everyone in attendance. I'll now turn it over to Nicole.
Warehouse Park continues to progress in its second year of construction, and you can see the park really starting to take shape. The pavilion structure was constructed over the winter, and now work continues on its mechanical and electrical systems as well as the building exterior. Also, lighting fixtures, grading work, and concrete elements are being installed in the park as we speak. And soon the fun stuff will begin with the landscaping, planting of trees, installation of the playground, building of the dog park, and the sport court. Additionally, the road work around the park is beginning with the closure of 106th Street this week, facilitating reconstruction of that roadway. The Warehouse Park project was to be a catalyst for change and development in downtown Edmonton. Just over 1 year into construction, the project is already achieving that goal. One tower on the west side has been completed and other development applications are advancing faster than we had expected. The city is collaborating with these developers to coordinate utility connections in the surrounding roadways to avoid rework in the future. Next slide, please. For 2025, the Neighborhood Renewal Construction Program includes 11 full neighborhood renewals, some with alleys, 10 microsurfacing projects, 3 separate alley renewals, and 5 collector renewals, which includes 132 Avenue. 132 Avenue is currently in its 3rd out of 5 years of construction. This project is managed in 2 distinct sections, an east section and a west section, each handled by its own contractor. The east section has 4 phases of construction, with 2 currently under construction, and the 3rd phase, which is in front of Baldwin School, starting imminently with the conclusion of the school year. The west section has 2 phases, and both are in full construction. All phases will be completed by the fall. Crews are typically working 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, with occasional Sunday work. We've maintained close coordination and communication with Edmonton Public School Board and Edmonton Catholic School District planners, principals, and bus service providers, which is crucial for minimizing our impacts. Our construction approach is phased to ensure the work is completed as efficiently as possible with staged roadway closures, minimizing disruption to adjacent residents and schools with alternative routes provided through adjacent roads. And we are maintaining pedestrian access on one side of the road at all times throughout construction. I'll now turn it over to Pascal.
Edmonton is rapidly expanding its active transportation network and creating a more connected city. We are focusing on missing links, district connectors, or high potential ridership areas. This means that the infrastructure being installed is largely adaptable. Where possible, permanent facilities such as shared pathways are also implemented. We are now in year 2 of the implementation, with the 2024 program anticipated to be completed by the end of this year. For 2025, 23 kilometers of new routes will be constructed in mature neighborhoods. Parking and operational changes are expected to take place along 12 streets to allow for facilities for all ages and abilities. Change include removal of on-street parking, conversion to one-way streets, and traffic calming measures. Pre-construction communication with impacted communities is also underway, many of which have been shared with the area councillors. Next slide. Transit priority measures aim to improve the efficiency and reliability of Edmonton's transit service. They mostly consist of signal timing and signage updates, with some reallocation of road space, such as queue jumps or transit lanes. For 2025, the only location that has notable traffic impact will be a mill and overlay along 101th Street between Kingsway and 107th Avenue to implement a transit lane. This change also involves the removal of on-street parking. Pre-construction communication with impacted communities is planned to begin soon. And now over to Jason.
We're continuing to make significant progress on the Yellowhead Trail Freeway Conversion Program with 4 out of 6 projects now complete. This progress is thanks to many partners, including the almost 250 workers on site on any given day. Some of you may have already experienced the benefit of these completed changes along the corridor already, and perhaps you've already seen the recently installed overhead wayfinding signage. Early this spring, following the budget amendment approval by Council in December, the contractor has continued to ramp up resources for the St. Albert Trail to 97th Street project, with multiple activities happening across multiple fronts, including underground utilities, earthworks, and bridge piling, all happening at the same time. Additionally, tunnel work is well underway and hidden from the public eye for the new underground drainage storm trunk. This drainage storm trunk is 2 kilometers long, and that work is intended to improve the level of service of drainage and minimize the recurrence of flooding at the St. Albert Trail underpass in the future. Last week, the project team shared a public service announcement to inform commuters of changes to the lane restrictions between St. Albert Trail and 97th Street. The traffic restrictions still retain 2 lanes of traffic in each direction. However, the limits have now been extended further east to include 97th Street. One last interesting detail to share: the aggregate material being prepared for the freeway construction is utilizing the recycled concrete runway from the previously operating municipal airport. Next slide, please. The Terwilliger Drive expansion project is being completed in 3 separate stages. Stage 1, which included the widening between White Mud Drive and Anthony Henday Drive from 2 to 4 lanes, including a designated bus lane, is now complete. Much of our focus right now is actively on Stage 2, which includes widening of White Mud Drive between 53rd Avenue and 119th Street, which is now in year 3 of 4. The project has recently completed a significant milestone with all bridge girder erections now in place for all 4 bridges. This includes the widened Rainbow Valley Bridge westbound and Rainbow Valley Bridge eastbound, as well as the new White Mud Creek pedestrian bridge and the new 142th Street pedestrian bridge. Looking ahead, the project team is preparing to open the westbound Rainbow Valley Bridge in late July. Westbound bridge. This will be a significant event for the project, requiring a significant traffic flip and a change in people's driver expectations for the corridor. It'll be redirecting traffic from the existing eastbound bridge to the newly rehabilitated and widened westbound bridge. The Terwilliger bus lane, connecting 53rd Avenue to Terwilliger Drive southbound, is expected to also be complete this summer. We also anticipate completing and opening the White Mud Creek pedestrian bridge and the 142 pedestrian bridge later this fall. Terwilliger Stage 3, which includes the interchange at Anthony Henday Drive, is now in its first year of construction. Pre-grading is underway for the new bridge overpass, and the main contract is set to come out or go to the public in fall of 2025, whereafter we can expect a significant increase of on-site activity in 2026. Next slide, please. The Lewis Farms facility and park project is continuing to make steady progress. The project is targeting construction completion by the end of 2027, with the facility open to the public by fall of 2028. Since the project started, we have seen over 10,000 cubic meters of concrete poured across all areas of the facility. In the arena, roof decking is complete and masonry work is advancing. Slab pours and steel erection are underway in the fitness and library section, while the aquatic center's 50-meter pool basin has also been poured. Looking ahead, concrete work is expected to be largely completed by July, and structural steel erection will be in full swing through July and August. The building envelope system is expected to start in late July as well. The project team continues its effort to hold the build-to-budget mandate set by Council. The architects, engineers, contractors, and suppliers are all working collaboratively together in a cycle of continuous cost management, a difficult assignment for a complex project like this rec center. We have made the decision to defer much of the improvements planned for the west half of the district park. The scope change was necessary to support the ongoing interest from the Edmonton Catholic School District to plan for a new high school with a planned capacity of 2,500 students. This was also recently captured in the approved spring SCBA. Next slide. Both the Coronation Park Sports and Recreation Center and Peter Hemingway rehabilitation projects are also both progressing well. The Peter Hemingway Aquatic Center is now approximately 90% complete. All the building exterior work is now finished, and crews are now looking ahead, concentrating on wrapping up the interior work, including preparing for the building operation systems. Building commissioning is anticipated to begin later this summer, with the pool scheduled to be refilled sometime in August. The Coronation Park Sports and Recreation Center is substantially complete, and the contractor has demobilized from the site. The project is ahead of schedule and projected to come in under budget. Our department is working closely with community services as they take steps to transition the necessary furniture, equipment, and prepare for staff onboarding and training to prepare for the opening of that facility. A final step includes achieving the necessary UCI Category 2 designation for the cycling track, otherwise referred to as the homologation process. This step is anticipated to take some additional time for this very unique and specialized indoor bike track. If everything goes according to plan, the public can expect both facilities to open over the winter. Next slide, please. The William Howerlock Park Rehabilitation Project is in its final year and remains on schedule. Construction completion is still targeting for this fall 2025. Our department is working closely with community services as they take necessary steps to transition furniture and equipment and prepare staff for resuming park operations. We've made substantial progress on all fronts, including the picnic shelters, the pavilion, the operations yard, including the Heritage Days storage area, the playground, but most importantly, the landscaping, hard and soft, which has been the critical path for this project. Looking ahead, we are anticipating reaching the following milestones shortly: the playground equipment installation, which is already underway, refilling of Howerlock Park, which is also underway, the sod installation, which is expected to be done by mid-July, and re-energization of the park by the end of July. We are looking forward to resharing this park with Edmontonians later this winter, and more details on the reopening plan will be shared when they become available. Next slide, please. Imagine Jasper Avenue between 114th Street and 124th Street is a 3-year undertaking, including significant underground and a complete reconstruction of the roadway from property line to property line. The project began on April 28th, focusing on the first stage between 114th Street to 117th Street. The project staging had been developed to mitigate potential for disruption during the winter months when limited construction is possible. This is a direct learning from the previous phase of construction between 109 to 114th Street completed a couple years ago. We've successfully completed drainage installation and utility relocations and are progressing well with removals, grading, and the installation of the low-impact development scope of work. Looking ahead, we will be finalizing streetlight and traffic signal installations, carrying out base concrete and asphalt reconstruction, and installing the paving stones in the boulevard, including site furniture, before the end of the year. Traffic is being managed with one lane open in each direction between 114th Street and 117th Street, and as important as that is to commuters, we are also spending considerable time and resources to ensure business access locally, and the bus stops are able to remain open as much as possible during construction. As this is the first year of construction for this project, we are expecting that any learnings and efficiencies gained during this first year can be applied to future years. Next slide, please. The 50th Street over Whitemud Drive project primarily involves a deck rehabilitation intended to provide a 25-year service life extension. The rehabilitation project is being delivered in 3 stages to allow for active traffic to continue with a minimum of 2 lanes of traffic in each direction. The project is currently in its first stage, which involves the west side of the bridge structure, and the new concrete deck was recently poured, and the contractor is preparing to shift traffic in early July. Although not the most complex or challenging of projects in terms of its scope and scale, we do recognize and acknowledge the importance of this arterial road in our broader traffic network, and together with city operations are monitoring traffic very closely. Next slide, please. The low-level bridge southbound project is our next bridge project, expected to start by the end of July. The project remains on track, having recently been tendered and awarded. The contractor's schedule remains approximately 4 months from start to finish and is expected to be complete by the end of the year. The project's scope includes a nominal service life extension to address emergent repairs, while further planning and design work is completed to determine its long-term future. The project includes the installation of scaffolding to allow construction access to the underside of the bridge to access the bearing points, as well as reinforcement of steel members. The sequencing of the low-level bridge project is largely influenced by the requirement to maintain open passage underneath the bridge for the Queen Elizabeth Edmonton riverboat. Southbound traffic will be redirected to the northbound bridge to mitigate the traffic impacts during the downtown from the downtown in the PM peak period. A major risk remains related to the unobservable conditions of a 75-year-old truss bridge structure. While multiple condition assessments have been done, there always remains a risk for changes. To mitigate the risk of completing this work, administration has carefully selected a pre-qualified contractor who is specialized in this area of work and has the experience to complete it. Next slide, please. Similar to low-level bridge, the Dawson Bridge rehabilitation also includes a nominal service life extension to address emergent repairs while further planning and design work is complete. The scope of work includes abutment and pier repairs as well as barrier sealing. We are currently working in the procurement for this project and anticipate awarding this work shortly. A key risk with this project, similar to low-level bridge, is the unobservable conditions with the over 100-year bridge structure. The work is being planned carefully to mitigate traffic as much as possible. Any bridge closures will be limited to a few weekends and overnight work only. Additionally, from time to time, single-lane alternating traffic will be in effect in the fall to accommodate specific work around the bridge abutments. One sidewalk will remain open at all times, and active mode users will be directed to either side of the bridge. Wayfinding signage will also clearly mark any detours needed for that project. Next and last project slide. The Wellington Bridge replacement project is currently in its procurement phase, and a contractor award is anticipated in early July. Although it is not intended to start until later this year, an early tender strategy will help allow for additional time and preparations to occur by the contractor prior to mobilizing to site. While we anticipate mobilization to begin in September, we will not be mobilizing until we receive confirmation that the West LRT accelerated intersection work at 142 Street is complete. Our teams are in regular communication on the status of this work. And although every construction project carries risk, the project team remains fairly optimistic that any learnings from the Duggan Bridge replacement and Lana Bridge replacement, both similar projects, both delivered on schedule, will help in ensuring that this project is also completed successfully. And with that, I'll turn it back to Craig to wrap up.
All right. Thank you, Jason, and thank you all. Next slide, please. Wanted to give a summary of our communication elements around all of these projects too. So each year with our construction season, we have a media event for both construction kickoff and construction wrap-up. These media events are supported by public communications that often include video, photos, and social media. In preparation for construction starting and throughout the season, public communication includes mailed construction bulletins, site and neighborhood signage, subscriber emails with key project information, our web pages, 311 updates, and traffic updates on social media. All of these are happening as part of our projects. To highlight key project milestones, media events are held as opportunities for tours of construction sites as well. And what these allow is for us to share details about the projects and bring people in behind the scenes to some of the projects that we're doing and guide positive updates about our city work. Some examples are the Expo Center Solar Installation Project, completion celebration, Lewis Farms Rec Center construction tours, and we've had a number of Horlock Park project tours and walks and updates on that as a few examples. A new educational animated video is also being prepared and will be shared with the public to showcase how the city plans, designs, and builds key infrastructure. And again, relationship management is a key part of our project communications and public engagement. Project teams connect regularly with community groups and business and community partners to share information and gather feedback. And I'd also like to highlight as part of that, as we know we said at the start of this construction season, the West End in and out of downtown was going to be the tightest part with all the work going on. And we've had a number of interactions. We've all gotten emails about the constraints there are at times with that collective impact. And just wanted to highlight that we continue to try to communicate with all of our business partners, with all of our downtown key business partners. Our teams have been out on downtown walks, working with Kim Petron's team in UPE on their relationships and joining them. We were at a DRC meeting as late as yesterday, end of day yesterday, where we gave updates and heard feedback around how we continue to try to improve communication with them. So we know that's always a challenge when you go from a project to a corridor to an entire area like the downtown. And our commitment and intent is to continue that journey and try and provide as much communication and updates on our projects as we can. And with that, that is the end of our presentation, and we're happy to hand it over to speakers.
Thank you so much for the presentation, and thank you for all the work that you have been doing. Looking at the list of the projects that are underway, it really sure speaks to the work that is required to be done. So, thank you for the good work. We're going to go to speakers on 3.1, and those speakers who are registered to speak on 3.2 and 3.3, what we are going to be doing, this committee will is scheduled till noon. Then there's another committee meeting at 1:30, which is the audit selection committee. Hopefully that would not take more than half an hour, 45 minutes. So then we're going to carry on the balance of the work from this committee into the afternoon, right? So even though it's not on the schedule, we're going to complete the agenda today for the infrastructure committee. So we will probably be coming back in the afternoon, approximately around 2:30. We how it goes, right? But we'll be hearing from all the speakers today on this. Okay. Now I'm sorry? We probably won't get to you by 12, right? But I don't know how fast we can go on this item, right? And then, yeah. It's always difficult to predict. Now, I will call upon Ron Glenn, Alberta Road Builders and Heavy Construction Association person. Ron, please come on this side, grab a chair. And then David Johnson is joining us remotely from Edmonton Construction Association. Each of you will have 5 minutes to make your presentation. But before we do start, I want to share my expectations for the conduct of everyone participating to ensure a safe and inclusive environment and workplace. These expectations apply equally to both in-person and virtual attendees. Hearing from the public is an important part of Council's process to ensure we hear the full diversity of opinions that exists in our community. As a meeting chair, I have a responsibility to ensure safety of all participants in today's meeting. As part of that responsibility, inappropriate comments or gestures will not be tolerated. If they occur, I will direct the clerk to immediately remove anyone engaging in such behavior. The type of behavior that will result in the removal from the meeting includes making disrespectful comments directed at individual staff members or other public speakers, or using profane language. Responsive behaviors to show support or dissent, such as shouting, cheering, clapping, or using the chat or emotion response features in the Google Meet are also not permitted. I will not provide any additional warnings, and once removed, the person will not be permitted to rejoin the meeting. This meeting is being live streamed, and everyone is welcome to view the live stream online. Again, my role as chair is not to moderate the nature of the content being discussed, but to ensure chamber behaviors are maintained to support a safe, respectful, neutral space for my colleagues, city employees, and the public. I want to thank you in advance for your respectful participation at today's meeting. So with that, we're going to go to Ron Glenn. You'll have 5 minutes to make your presentation. Then we'll hear from David. Then there might be some questions from committee and council members. Please go ahead.
Great. Good morning. Can you hear me? That's okay. Good morning. Thank you, councillors, for the opportunity to talk about the association that I represent. I'm Ron Glenn. I represent the Alberta Road Builders Heavy Construction Association. We're a nonprofit business association of 700 companies and other members. About half our members are contractors who perform the work, and the other half are suppliers to the industry who provide equipment, legal services, financial services, etc. We have 45 municipalities who are members of our association. You're welcome to join if you like. And we have 40 engineering firms that are also members. We employ over 50,000 Albertans at peak of season. We're the provincial advocacy organization for the civil infrastructure industry. We build the roads, bridges, highways, water and sewer systems, streetscapes. We build your LRT and bike paths, and building foundations for the commercial construction side of the business. And we also do the work of shaping development for subdivision and industrial developments, and as well, our members also are involved in the pipeline building industry. We work with city administration on effective project delivery improvements, and we lobby and advocate publicly for appropriate funding for transportation infrastructure. Our industry is highly competitive. Contractors review engineering plans for projects that owners tender out, and each bidder considers the blueprints and then project constraints as presented by the owner. They develop a high-level plan as to how to conduct that work. They estimate the costs, and then they submit a bid on closing day and hope they get the work. A couple things to consider when you're thinking about the civil infrastructure side of things. It's not a manufacturing business. Everything in civil infrastructure, the linear side, is not cookie cutter at all. Every project is custom designed, and there's always surprises. There are geotechnical conditions like soil structure, underground water systems, required materials and sources of supply come from all over the place, and every project is unique. The contractor's role is to be the project manager, planning and assembling labor, equipment, and then resolving problems during construction and adapting the work. And this involves a lot of risk, both financial and physical. Some cost drivers to think about: the conditions that are put on the work, like nighttime work, utility coordination and permitting, working on a live use roadway, the hours of work, weather, and a short season are all the conditions that contractors have to work within. I do want to let you know that Edmonton is, in our opinion, a national leader in asset management systems, and the Neighborhood Renewal Program is gold standard. When any other jurisdiction, whether we're talking to our colleagues across the country, if anyone says who does it better, I can always say Edmonton does it better. The Neighborhood Renewal Program, with regular work, with a revenue stream that is guaranteed, it is the kind of work that contractors will fight to get, and will improve and will invest in their equipment and their staff in order to keep doing that work, because it's very good work. And so we like to thank Edmonton for being that. Some approaches to reducing the risk that owners at your table can think about is that high quality designs are very important up front. Measure twice, cut once. It always helps. Any advanced planning and scheduling helps. The 4-year capital plan that Edmonton has is fantastic. Transparency in the planning and the communication to industry so that they can plan in advance is very important. City of Edmonton, again, is a preferred client in Alberta of the 3 big public sector clients. A successful project has a knowledgeable client. There's clarity on roles. The client understands the business, has the confidence to make decisions during the project, and is reasonable. The focus is on solutions, and they consider our input, and we really appreciate that because Edmonton is a leader there. In terms of your model of procurement, choose the right model for the right project. And if there's time, I'd be happy to talk about the constraints that we understand Council is under, having to make some very difficult decisions because of provincial funding cuts that we have seen on the highway system, but also the cuts to municipalities. In the last 15 years, although our population has grown by 32%, the funding for the linear civil infrastructure side from the province has been reduced by 31%. And you adjust that for inflation, and it's a 50% cut. It's not sustainable.
Thank you.
Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. David Johnson, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Great. So I was having some technical difficulties earlier, so I'm glad I was able to resolve them. Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. My name is David Johnson, and I'm the president of the Edmonton Construction Association. I actually work very closely with Ron Glenn as well. Good to see you too, Ron. We represent about 1,200 member firms across Edmonton's construction landscape and industry, representing commercial infrastructure and institutional builds. We actually employ thousands, tens of thousands of Edmontonians who are responsible for building the public and private infrastructure that obviously supports our city's growth, resilience, and livability. So thank you again today for the invite to be able to provide some messaging to the Infrastructure Committee. We are here today to express our appreciation for the constructive and increasingly collaborative relationship between both the City of Edmonton as well as the Edmonton Construction Association, particularly with respect to the infrastructure and planning departments. You know, we've been doing this for a long time. Our association's almost 100 years old, and we've had a long-standing relationship with the city. But I can tell you that over the past few years, the tone and quality of the engagement between the ECA and the City of Edmonton has steadily improved. So we've seen some real progress in terms of how the city engages early with our members, seeking input on various project delivery approaches, and we want to make sure we work in partnership to solve those issues before they escalate. So that collaboration has actually had some very real and tangible outcomes, such as better timelines, better risk management, and better value for public dollars. So again, our 1,000+ members have long supported the city's infrastructure's ambitions, not just as the contractors, but as community builders. So we've seen firsthand how a well-functioning partnership between our industry and the city leads to more efficient delivery, smoother permitting and procurement, and an increased willingness to explore innovation in project design and execution. In particular, we actually would like to wholeheartedly commend the city staff for the increasing transparency we've been seeing in capital planning and project development. This transparency really does help industry prepare better for upcoming work, manage the workforce planning, and reduce pricing uncertainty. So it is a sign of mutual respect and something that we highly value. Furthermore, we're also encouraged by the city, or the willingness of the city to explore new project delivery models that promote shared risk, innovation, and more predictable outcomes. More on the alliance side, IPD, and things that maybe the city hasn't spent a lot of time on in the past. Obviously, every project is unique, and as Ron mentioned, choosing the right project based on the size of the project and the constraints of the project will be important. Again, reinforcing the fact that early engagement with industry is very, very important, right down to the project delivery method. So ultimately, when the ECA and the industry has a seat at the table, we're better equipped to support the city's goals, flag any potential costs or schedule risks, and contribute to ideas that draw upon the diversity of experience across our membership. So in short, this partnership is working. I'm here today to tell you, let's keep building on it. So I know there's always continuous improvements to be made, and we remain committed to having that dialogue with city administration. I'd like to thank council for having regular meetings with the ECA as well as the city administration. And I think it's important that we acknowledge what's going well. The relationship between the ECA and the city of Edmonton is productive, professional, and I think that the shared goal here is to deliver excellent results for Edmontonians. So, we're very grateful to members of council who have taken time to meet with us. Obviously that valuable dialogue really helps to serve and inform Edmontonians about the realities of city building and the opportunities ahead. So again, our members, we take pride in building this city. I will wrap it up there. I just want to thank you very much for your time today, and we look forward to continuing to support construction infrastructure projects that obviously make Edmonton the great city that it is.
Well, thank you so much for both for you joining us and your ongoing participation and partnership with our city administration and council. We appreciate that. And we're going to go to questions from committee members and council members. Council Salvador.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate both of you being here today and for your ongoing dialogue and partnership and collaboration. Maybe just to start with Speaker Glenn, I know you ran out of time a little bit at the end there, but you were just speaking about some of the changes to provincial funding. I wonder if you could just elaborate on that a little bit.
It's having a little difficulty hearing you, but I think you're asking about the provincial funding?
Correct.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So just in looking at of course, we lobby for for appropriate funding for infrastructure, because we're the frontline workers and we're seeing what's happening with the system. In 2010, funding generally to municipalities, I didn't break it down to specific municipalities, but provincial funding, not the federal grants, but the provincial funding in 2010 from MSI to municipalities was $876 million, and transportation funding for municipal support was $1.06 billion. And in 25, this budget that was just passed, the local government fiscal framework, which has replaced MSI, is 820, but the transportation funding is 514. So that's a reduction in nominal of 31%, but if you adjust it for inflation, it's actually a 50% decrease. We've seen similar cuts on the highway maintenance side, which is down about 26% inflation adjusted. And this is with a population that has increased by 32% over the same amount of time. So the consumption of the infrastructure inventory is on a downward trajectory, and that means there's going to be more reconstruction required rather than rehabilitation, and those costs are multiples of just good rehabilitation. So it's a looming financial disaster coming.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing some of those numbers. I guess what does that mean for on-the-ground impact for workers in our province, workers in our city?
Well, what we will look for is, of course, the four-year capital plan. Mm-hmm. That's very important, and the communication that we have with administration in January of every year and through our regular committee meetings. We have an Edmonton committee meeting specifically. We get great communication from this city, so you're well up on that. But when it comes to what is the impact, workforce development is the looming problem for us. It's always been a problem, but it's going to get worse. Mm-hmm. And what we want to see is continued pipeline of work that is reliable, and budgets that reflect that, so we can promise to our workforce that there is a career there for them. And so when budgets go up and down, that's very difficult for our industry because it's very capital intensive. And so we build up and we buy equipment and we train workers. And if budgets are cut, all of a sudden those workers go to other industries and we have to sell off equipment. The next time that cycle comes around, you're going to have to pay more.
Right. Well, thank you so much for that. And what I'm really hearing is the importance of that predictability and stability when it comes to, being able to have line of sight to capital projects. So I want to jump on some of the comments you made about the City of Edmonton's Neighborhood Renewal Program. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective that we really are leading the way in the nation when it comes to asset management. Maybe sticking with the theme of predictability and stability is part of the reason that program is the gold standard, is because it is sustainable and predictable, and we have sort of continuity in the way that program is rolled out.
Absolutely. The funding is transparent. We know where it's coming from. It's predictable. The choice of neighborhoods is done on a reliable basis, and it's structured and predictable. So it's highly sought after work. Great. And it's very tricky work because you're working, of course, with right in everybody's front yard. And we know that everybody on the block is a project supervisor when it comes to our work. It's very tricky, and we appreciate, of course, residents' cooperation.
For sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Council Salvador. Just follow up. Have you, and thank you for sharing those numbers and your advocacy that you undertake on behalf of your members and communities. Any opportunities for you, or you may have already done this, working with the Alberta Municipalities Association, ABMUNI, which used to be called Alberta Municipalities, Urban Municipalities Association, or the Rural AMA. Any opportunities, or have you undertaken any joint work, analysis, advocacy to ensure that that message of reduction in infrastructure dollars is reaching the appropriate ministries within the governments?
Yes, we have, and we'll be much more active over the next number of months.
Okay.
The Rural Municipalities Association is probably more active with us
Okay.
than Alberta municipalities. But
I think that may present some opportunities for joint advocacy. So, Councillor Tang and Councillor Knack are cities representatives on that association. So, if you want to follow up with them to connect you, if you're not already connected, they'll be helpful. Can you? I think people get frustrated with ongoing construction, right? And but it's important to continue to build and rebuild the city. Neighborhood renewal program has been successful, and this council is contemplating or has some motions in the works of creating additional renewal, ongoing funding, dedicated funding opportunities for balance of the infrastructure that we have, particularly in the roadway infrastructure. We have a huge deficit, and the buildings renewal deficit that we have. So I think that kind of opportunities will build on some of the work that has been done under the neighborhood renewal program. Gives us some more. So just want to get your thoughts on that.
Would encourage and support anything that provided, long-term planning. You'll get better pricing if you have a committed program, and it's clear as to what needs to be tackled in what order.
Yeah.
And then industry will adapt to that published timeline to compete.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also on the coming back to the reduction in grant funding, I don't know how. I mean, there will always be opportunities for more funding from other orders of government, but the way things are, I think municipalities will end up doing more or carrying on some of that burden more on property taxes, right? So having a kind of long-term plan instead of ad hoc planning, right, would be helpful, what I'm hearing from you.
Well, that's right, and so we would support that kind of, long-term planning, and we also recognize that that's putting, significant pressure on council to make difficult choices, raising taxes or not. But it's got to be done. If the work doesn't get done, if you don't treat the problem at the right opportunity with the right type of approach, it's just going to lead to a bigger problem and a higher cost. So the sooner you can get onto problems, and it's just, whatever man builds or people build, time destroys. So
Yes.
It has to be done. It's part of the life cycle costs, and if you're planning those repairs to be timed appropriately, you'll have overall better life cycle costs of whatever type of infrastructure you're building.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you for joining us. Councillor Tang, go ahead.
Yeah, great, thank you. So, Ron, you said you have 45 members. 45 members.
We have 700 members, just under 700, 45 municipalities.
45 municipalities. Are they mostly rural?
They're a bit of both, towns,
Okay.
counties, MDs, yeah.
Yeah, I'm wondering, just to build off of your point around the reduction, both in provincial infrastructure funding for their own projects and also reduction in funding for municipalities. What kind of adjustments have you seen with some of these municipalities? So to give you an example, some of the things I've heard in small towns is people are, opting for gravel instead of paved road because of cost. I'm wondering if you have examples that you can share about how municipalities other municipalities are adjusting to some of these reduction in funding.
They're having to pinch pennies, as you say, and go to choose other or defer. So that's the bigger problem, is deferring necessary work. So it seems like a cost savings at the time, but it's not. And you know, what they can do with the money they've got, I think they're just making more and more difficult choices.
Yeah. I guess I'm just trying to reflect that, you know, I think that a lot of the challenges we're facing as a big city, you know, it's experienced by everyone across the province. And I think those cases that you're talking about, you know, I hear on a regular basis within the Alberta municipalities community as well. David, I wanted to jump to you for a bit. You referenced, thank you for being here, and thank you, Ron, for being here as well. David, you referenced the next report, the 3.4 on the delivery model. I'm wondering if you can just speak to a bit more about your association's feedback on that particular one. As you didn't register to speak on that, just wanted to kind of hear a bit more from you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Councillor Tang. We're not speaking on that report specifically because we strongly believe that the project delivery model needs to match the project and the participants in it. However, we've always strongly encouraged the use of more collaborative delivery models, you know, integrated project delivery, alliance, progressive design build, and those types of things that obviously bring the contractors in early into the project so they can help to, you know, identify any areas of concern. But when you talk, I mean, again, with the goal and the outcome of having a more efficient project delivery model, I think that there's been some hesitation at the municipal level, not necessarily the city of Edmonton, but just municipalities in general, on some of these models, i.e. IPD, given the risk sharing and sort of the perceived loss of control in some of these. And it does take time to overcome those boundaries. And frankly, those types of models aren't necessarily right for every project either. And Ron would certainly, you know, as a horizontal build, you know, you'll see a lot of stipulated sum sort of models out there because that's just what makes sense. So I hope I was able to shed some light on the question, but again, you know, our membership is really encourages us to advocate on behalf of those, you know, collaborative models that see early involvement by contractors. And we do the same with the province as well. So it's not just the municipality. We are a registered lobbyist, similar to the road builders. And we need to make sure that we carry that message up to the province with respect to their infrastructure projects as well, of which many of our members are providers of service.
And other than kind of the hesitation around risk sharing, I guess any other factors for some of that hesitation?
You know what, it's something that is new. And when I say new, it's not common. And, you know, when you've been working on something that's had some level of success for years and years and years, the old adage is, if it isn't broken, don't fix it. You know, I think there's a certain level of comfort with using various project delivery methods, whether it's, again, like your CM at risk, or whatever the case may be, design build. I think that, again, the reason and the rationale for having so many different types of project delivery methods that are out there.
Sorry, I'm out of time, but I think I get your point. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Karen. Sorry to go over top.
Councillor Rutherford.
Yeah, thank you. It's exciting to have you here today because I think this is the first time we've actually been able to have a real, like, candid public discussion with specifically this industry on the capital things. I want to zone in on 132 Avenue for a second. I did an inquiry, and one of the things it talked about was canceling. There's a tipping point at which canceling it is detrimental to relationships. It can escalate costs for future projects. And I wanted to get more of an understanding of when, you know, you think a project is progressing and then it's canceled abruptly, like at what checkpoint is it kind of like the no-go from an industry perspective? And B, what ripple effects does that have on the behind the scenes in industry? And speak like to the general public, right? Because I think it's just for them very easy to just cancel a project. but I think the understanding of the long-term impacts of that, I would love your perspective. And that's to either Ron or David.
You want to start, Ron?
Sure. Well, if a project has been awarded and we have a contract, then both parties expect that the contract is going to be fulfilled, and that's why we're called contractors. So I'm not familiar with the project that you were describing, Councillor. Sorry, and
The minister called for its cancellation, and this project is halfway under construction.
I see.
The Minister of Transportation.
And is it a provincial?
It's a neighborhood
project?
No, it's a neighborhood renewal project funded through neighborhood renewal.
Well, that's interesting. Can I put it that way? I mean, if there's a, resources people have expended money in our companies to get that work done. And so all that, purchase of equipment or whatever, renewal of equipment, those sort of things have been, that's been spent. And the workers, would hope to conclude the work that they've been hired to do.
And what if they weren't? Like, so what if, the minister called for that, and what if council responded and did stop it? What would that look like? What is at risk?
Well, it's the risk that would be involved in cancellation of any contract. It depends on what the terms and conditions are in the contract. If there's a negotiated resolution or if it's termination, then ultimately there are legal avenues and claims and all that sort of stuff that would come out of it.
Yeah, because one of the things I say to the residents, it would ultimately at this point cost us more to stop than to continue.
I would also add in too that if you were to stop, I imagine that leaves some sort of a little bit of an infrastructure deficit. That's why this project was approved in the first place, was to address that. And in order to stop it, it could be perceived as being put on hold, which means that may end up happening later on. And of course, with cost escalation and inflation and actually any of the contractual costs to terminate the project, it certainly will cost taxpayers a lot more. So we wouldn't see a whole lot of taxpayer value out of stopping a project at that stage in the game. And I'm similar to Ron. I'm unfamiliar with at what stage that this project is at.
I was just giving that as an example because it's one that I'm getting a lot of feedback. I represent a portion of the area that's covered by that project. Yeah. And so I have been trying to communicate that too, but I thought it would be good to get the perspective. But I think just in general, another narrative that's out there on our infrastructure is that they're really elaborate, right? And let's focus in on neighborhood renewal because Ron, you were speaking to that. We have a policy that 10% is for growth, but a bulk of the funding for neighborhood renewal does indeed go to truly fixing the roads, replacing the sidewalks and the lighting infrastructure. Is that your understanding too, or your experience?
You mean between the mix of renewal? I mean, the neighborhood renewal is, it's very necessary. It has to be done. So the fact that it's programmed out for many years, and there's rarely a debate about which neighborhood is next because everyone, residents as well as industry, everybody knows that every neighborhood will get renewed over time. I think there's been some conjecture over what the design is because the original was just like for like, and then I think in later neighborhoods there were more elements that were added in, and then that made it a little more
I appreciate that.
or difficult.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Councillor Rutherford. Really appreciate your input and you joining us both. Thank you. This concludes the questions to you from the committee and council members. Now we're going to go to administration for questions. All right, Councillor Salvador, you selected this, right? Did you not? I did. Don't have any questions. Okay. Maybe I will start and I will focus on the communications. I know you have been meeting with business associations, other concerned business groups, because there has been quite a bit attention, particularly to bridge repairs and rehabilitation. Have you shared this presentation that you shared with us today to the detail that you shared with us with them?
No, the meeting we had was more verbal and just getting feedback back and forth in the most recent one. So, and this was just built for today. So not yet beyond what's in public.
Yeah. Are you planning to? I think this is very good information and very good visuals, and also identifies whether the project is on budget or delayed or on time, right? And I think and when the timelines for scheduled to be finished, right? And I think when the project starts, when the project finish, I think this is very good information that can be easily understood instead of going through a report. Is very good visuals and easily understood information.
Yeah, happy to do that and look for ways to reinforce where they can find it or share and give input to it if they have questions.
Okay. Yeah, because that was good. All right. Councillor Cardinal, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Yeah, maybe just on that same point, first of all, I appreciate the report and the summary of all of the high-level projects. That's great. I did pop open the construction map, as it were. And a few questions on that, and I'm raising this sort of as a general example. So when I pop open the map, for instance, we, recently with respect to the LRT alignment, accelerated work and the closures related to that, 107th Avenue also had construction work on it, and I understood that to be neighborhood renewal work, but that does not show up on this map. And so, it's all well and good, I guess, to say that this is a primary communication piece so that people know where the conflicts are and where the interruptions may be. But and maybe I'm using it wrong, but I don't see where neighborhood renewal pops up on that.
Councillor Cartmel, the work on 107th Avenue is the 107th Avenue revitalization project. It's not a neighborhood renewal, it's a revitalization project. It is on Building Edmonton. It is showing as work being started in 2025.
Okay, so I see that dot, and that dot on the map is at 101st Street and 107th Avenue. But the work went as far west as 127th Street?
122nd, yeah. And it is indicated in the project description.
But not on the map. And the other,
yeah, I mean, it's an evolving. You got some of the points are actually corridors, and so you're right. It's a reference point for it, and there's some limitations for how we link them right now.
Yeah. So I think
that's fair.
So just back to Mayor Sohi's comments about communication, I think that there's if we drew lines up on every part of every road that was going to be interrupted, it would look a little different. Because the next one I'm going to is that there's a dot here that says work on the 149th Street ramps over the White Mud. But if you're going from anywhere north, coming down or to the White Mud or vice versa, White Mud up to the north, the only intersection that is not compromised, or the only route that is not compromised, is 149th Street. 156th Street has construction on it, 170th Street has construction on it, or across it. Is there, first of all, it doesn't really show just what the interruption is, but secondly, is there not a way to do more in the way of coordinating this work in terms of criticality? Certainly bridges are critical. I'm not sure neighborhood revitalization is critical when we know we already have this big, long, linear project that is interrupting the West End. How do we get better at that?
So just one flag, Councillor Cartmel, the 149th Street project is currently in design, and construction is not anticipated until 2027. And so it's just important to note that Building Edmonton does capture planning and design projects. It is also a function that you can remove those and look for only projects that are in construction.
Yeah, sorry, that's right. I'm sorry for that. That's my mistake. It does say it's in concept. So, all right. So maybe there won't be that same conflict there. But I guess the question remains, is there how do we get better, I guess, at pushing off the less critical things while the more critical things are happening in a particular geographical space?
And I can speak to that because it does start with a lot of our renewal prioritization. And so one of the key things we do when we look at our renewal program is start with the condition of the assets, but we also layer in understanding of geographical areas. And so fire stations are good examples where we do work with fire to understand what is the operational impact of closing fire stations, things like that. So that's the first step. And then as we progress through the projects, we work with infrastructure delivery, and our colleagues in building great neighborhoods to understand what are their other projects, how are they evolving, what are we going to look for actual construction timelines. But there are things, unfortunately, that sometimes grant opportunities, delayed timelines for certain projects that we still need to do the critical work. And then that becomes that finessing of the projects.
I was just going to say, and I know we're running short on time, and that takes us full circle to that whole analyzing all the system of traffic for how we adapt within where we know we need to go to try and accommodate the best we can.
Yeah, the wheel that you showed at the beginning. Okay, I have a couple more questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jans.
Thank you. This is an excellent report, and I appreciate it. I guess I want to move a little bit from the how we built to what we built to how we built. So when we had the conversation about the bridges in downtown previously, I'd asked, do you feel that you have kind of a green light to be flexible? If you want to work late, if you want to move through sound bylaws, noise bylaws, if you want to be more nimble in terms of working through season or whatever, do you feel there are constraints in our bylaws that are impeding industry or construction that may be an issue for you?
No, I think we understand that we work within the constraints provided through the bylaws, like you mentioned, but we understand that there is a reasonableness that needs to be applied to that. And even the bylaws, the noise bylaw being one of them, we have worked outside of the regular hours. There's a bit of a process internally where we have to go through and get an exemption, but we typically look at those as a very last resort. I can't think, like, in terms of the traffic systems bylaw, working closely with Caitlin and the coordination with her work, and you heard from Mr. Glenn from the road builders too, like, shifting all your work to the nighttime doesn't work with their industry either. So you're trying to work through iteratively all the different interests from all these different groups, whether it's residents who live in the area, commuters who drive through, the workers that are expected to deliver on the work, and how that all is expected to work. And it's a bit of a complex approach to dealing with things, but in the end, we typically have the tools we need to be able to deliver as needed, the most cost effectively. We don't want to have to spend twice as much money as needed to be able to deliver on the same outcomes. So I think we're in a fairly good position. And if I knew something today, we would come forward with a recommendation and provide that.
So if I compared our construction season and our ability to work compared to Calgary, Lethbridge, Lloydminster, Toronto, Vancouver, we are a very enabling environment. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. I have a couple of questions since we were talking about roads and renewals. According to the fiscal gap report, every year we're spending $300 million on just the capital on our roads and bridges and transportation infrastructure, and then an additional $166 million a year in operating. I realize this might be teasing another conversation, but when are we going to have the conversation about we're doing this work, but the right sizing of the infrastructure? Do we necessarily need to do all 5 kilometers of this road, or is 4.5 sufficient, or does this require this additional piece or that? How are we going to have that conversation about not just what we're building, but are we right sizing the right amount in the right places? Or is that a continuous conversation that we'll see in advance of the capital plan?
I would say it's going to be a continuous conversation, especially as we set out the CIO and our next 4-year capital budget and what we think we can achieve. Part of the conversations, I suspect, will get exactly into that on the scoping side of what we're doing.
Is there a formula in neighborhood renewal that says, we're looking to reduce surface for upkeep by 3% or 7% or something like that?
No, I wouldn't say that. Oh, sorry, Nicole, do you want to go?
Yeah, so typically, back to our November 26th report for roadway infrastructure, we're usually decreasing 10 to 15% of the infrastructure in the neighborhood by narrowing to the current modern standards of complete streets and doing that on a regular basis. We also do some closures of different aspects when they are not necessarily required or needed. We're putting in turf in places instead of putting roads or other things like that. So there is, with neighborhood renewal, we do look and typically do decrease the pavement structure inventory as we go through.
And is there areas where the provincial legislation requires an excess of curve or space or surface or something?
No.
No, I was just going to echo what
Oh,
Nicole.
please.
So we don't have number targets, but we have policies and direction through those other mechanisms like Complete Streets that take us that way when we're doing the renewal, as Nicole mentioned. And our guidelines of how we design are specific to the speed of the road. So we follow national guidelines on that, and everyone does. So that's how you would influence those things. So if we're going from a 60 to a 40-kilometer road, you're going to see design elements specific to that. And that would apply everywhere.
And since we reduced speed limit to 40, I imagine as we have future conversations, that'll be transpiring.
And part of our work, especially in neighborhoods and on our collector roads that were higher speed going to 40, we look specifically at that as part of our renewal program.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll take a round. Yeah, just coming back to some of the comments that were made from our speakers about how the neighborhood renewal program is a national leader. I guess recognizing that we are leading in this space, what would you say are sort of the next things that we would be looking at for that dedication to continual improvement? We already have a great program. What's the next step?
Beyond the neighborhood program or within?
Within.
Nicole, do you want to?
I think fundamentally we're always looking for opportunities to improve the neighborhood renewal program. I think one of the intricacies with neighborhood renewal is the timeline of the construction with the timeline of the planning and design and how policies fundamentally change across that landscape. So I believe Councillor Cartmel was talking about Lorelei neighborhood versus Garapi the other day. That was 5 years between planning and design between those projects, and we had accessibility policy come in, we had city plan policy come in, we had bike plan implementation policy come in, and they're very different. So for us, it's really being able to provide a consistent product based upon the policies that we want to look at fundamentally, and figuring out how that can be done in the environment that we are in from a policy perspective. I think the other thing for neighborhood renewal as well, on a regular basis, opportunities for improvement. We do tons of communication. Communications and engagement is always something that we can do more and different of. We are looking at that as well here as part of our work plans and seeing what that looks holistically like, and just the length of time for some of those engagements and how we go about doing that when the communities may not have the decision-making power that they feel that they have. So those are some of the things that we're looking at for opportunities for improvement for neighborhood renewal.
I would just add too, I mean, we understand, like you all understand, the constraints we're under budget-wise. So we are looking at as much efficiency to provide those add-ons that we can, and how do we optimize our designs where we put the proper enhancements we should, like around schools and things, but even in our work with Build and others, where's that line between what is appropriate and necessary for the future city, but also looking to the cost influence of that overall, whether it's the pure renewal part or the growth elements. So we do continue to be dynamic and look at how we can best use those dollars.
Great. Thank you so much for those reflections and those answers. I'm going to jump to a slightly different question. So I guess I'm thinking about the interplay between our ongoing renewal deficit and just the overlapping nature of some of our construction projects. And I'm wondering sort of the pacing and phasing of a number of our construction projects. What is the relationship between that and the renewal deficit? Is there an interplay? I could imagine a scenario where if we have a long list of projects that are in queue, we know need to be renewed, does that lead to sort of a compounding effect? And do we see that?
I'll let you go too. I think I have a good example on the neighborhood program. Will we give you updates around what's coming, not just in the four-year cycle, but even beyond that? Sometimes you'll see a neighborhood shift and go further down the list, It's because our assessments have taken us from a renewal category to a full reconstruct, because its condition has degraded before we could get there. And Ron talked about that cascading effect. And when you get into a reconstruction, you're a whole other scale of dollars. So then we just maintain it to a safe surface, and then we have to go in and reconstruct. And that's a very progressive program with dollars there. So that's an example of what happens around us trying to chase our deficit.
Yeah, and sort of, I guess with those cascading effects beyond cost escalation, I think that's when we start to get into challenges with trust, with community, where there might be an expectation that my neighborhood's in really bad condition, but now you've actually been bumped because things have gotten even worse. Fair?
That is fair, yeah, for a better outcome and more longevity when we finally get there. But you're right, that's the dynamic of shifting those expectations. That's a fair comment.
I would add, Councillor Salvador, that it also creates a concern when the money becomes available, because at that point you have so much to do that industry doesn't have capacity, the city wouldn't have capacity, disruptions would be too many to account for. And so from that perspective, that gap is also creating, even if money becomes available, a significant challenge.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rutherford?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to focus in on the part of the presentation around the building, Edmonton. And first, I appreciate that you say it's the source of truth, but I have a real tension with this because it's the source of truth based on the budget that's approved. So Yellowhead, for example, says it's on budget. But because now the budget on the thing says 1.1 billion because we approved another 100 million. Right? So I wonder if that is, in a sense, creating a bit of distrust in the public. Because yes, we do have it now in our reports where it says this is the timeline of any budget adjustments that have happened along the way. But at the end of the day, whatever's on that website is what the current budget approved was, including what I would consider substantive budget adjustments, thinking about capital line LRT as well.
Yeah, Councillor Rutherford, you're absolutely correct. I think the nuance with this one is typically we baseline the budget schedule and scope when we create the standalone profile, as you know, as you've been through a number of our supplementary capital budget adjustments. So in this case, the standalone profile was created at the same time that the budget request came through. So there wasn't really a budget amendment to the project, but there was a budget amendment to the program. So it's a little bit of a nuance there between kind of how we've carried this project from its start, where we have a carrier budget that includes the entire program, and then we've been creating standalone profiles. So you're absolutely right that the budget has experienced a change. It is still within our thresholds that we would typically carry for projects. So it's within kind of the 10% threshold.
Yeah, it is. It is within the 10% for 1 billion. I get that.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, from the way we with the way we communicate, when we say 94% of projects are on budget, I don't know if Edmontonians have come to trust that number.
Yeah, Councillor, it's Craig here. I understand exactly what you're saying. Like, our processes that we built is we go through our design phases, then we come to you with our standalones or around that. We call the checkpoint to it's really about a 60% design. When we're comfortable, we know enough to set the budget for the rest of the project within those contingencies. So where you'll see us reset a project or have a project stay green or go green, it's really that decision point of council when we know the budget, when we're approving that standalone, that starts us off in our category. And so when you look at the LRT project, we came and asked for that budget before we went out to tender. When we got our tenders back, the prices were higher. So we had to come back, ask for an adjustment. Those projects were at similar phases, but we had already set the budget with you. So if you go on the website and look for LRT, it's a red on budget and it will stay that way for the rest of the project. That's us trying to be transparent about when we get approval from you and setting our budgets. But I fully acknowledge that that can create confusion to the public. And then there's another layer there. If we have to change a scope that we bring to you and you approve it, that resets it as well. So it's kind of that what's fair to track the projects, but is it confusing as we navigate through that in trying to be transparent on the website? Yes, I understand there's both sides of that.
And at what point, appreciate that answer, and at what point do projects get put on the Building Edmonton website? Because this isn't a comprehensive list. Like, for example, the Wellington Fire Station is not on here, the project. It's in planning, but then I look and I see other ones that are planning are on here. So at what point do we put it on to this to communicate with Edmontonians?
Councillor Rutherford, Wellington Fire Station is on Building Edmonton, and it is consistent with our practice to put them as soon as we start the planning work. So as soon as checkpoint 1 is approved.
I'm looking at the map right now on the website live, and the dot in the near the where the fire hall would be.
Yeah, so we're just looking at it as well. It looks like it's not been mapped to the right area. So the project is there. If you search Wellington, you'll find it.
Okay.
It's unfortunately the dot is not in the right place, so we will get that fixed. Thank you.
Okay, and basically as soon as a project is in our capital plan, it's on this map.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rutherford. Councillor Cardwell.
Thank you. I had those same questions about budget reporting, so I appreciate Councillor Rutherford asking those. And I get it's complicated. What are you reporting against? The original budget, the approved budget, the current budget? There's complexity there, and there's reasons often, right? So I get that, but I still agree that we got to tell a bit of a better story, I think, somehow. I don't want to beat up on neighborhood renewal, but I just want to come back to some of the comments that were made earlier. That I appreciate the point that was made that there's a difference between Laurier and Garieppe because they're a bit. We've had layering on of policy. The concern I have is that when we've layered on the policy, we have not made discrete decisions to say this policy will have that effect. And so, and I maybe I should have asked this of Mr. Glenn, but I take his point that, this is an exemplary program. We have baked into our property tax revenue dedicated dollars for renewal, which means there's dedicated dollars coming out of that pot for renewal, which means there's a continuous stream of work coming for our contractor industry. That's great. And I don't think it makes a difference whether we do 4 neighborhoods or 5 with the same amount of money to the contracting industry, as long as there's a stream of work. But it matters to the taxpayer. And so I am wondering, and it matters to the flow of work. So, Mr. Wabam, you spoke of neighborhoods that fall down the list. I've got a couple of those that have gone from fix it up to complete rebuilds, and so now they're delayed 3 or 4 years. The cascading effect. But if we weren't, my word, overspending in some of the neighborhoods, maybe they wouldn't be delayed so long. So how do we unbutton that? And we're probably going to talk about this a little bit later, and I'll stop in a second. Are policies considered absolutes, or are they guides? And the layering on of such.
Right.
Yeah.
My answer to you is they're guides. And even our neighborhood policy that says try and target about 5% of the new elements beyond your base renewal, up to 10%.
Yeah.
That's at a program level, as I said. So, and we talked about this before, I suggested, if we want to have a test of that and really look at how those policies apply themselves, then a motion from you to review the policy with those parameters would do it. What I will say to you, though, is that I think we are diligent. I would say even in our tracking, like we looked at 132 as a huge change from the wide collector to a proper connector with all of the priorities in that corridor from all the schools and things. And even that project, when we looked at it, those are typically 5% or so add on top of the 95 that goes into your basic infrastructure.
Well, I feel like we've teased that out. Have we not asked that question and answered? Like, I mean, I could create a motion that is similar to the one in 3 point, whatever the report coming.
I think we have, and I would say, I don't know that the policies are causing a lot of extra build, in my opinion. We're doing the appropriate adds at the right places to meet the future needs of the community.
But we're not making it, so if the policies are guidelines, should it not follow then that we make discrete decisions on whether to increase the scope and cost of a project according to that guideline? If they're not prescriptive.
I would say we take the policy guidelines and we get prescriptive when we get into the design of how we apply. And then there's layers of the design standards that we have to follow as well.
But that's not a council decision, that's an
No,
administrative.
that's an admin decision
Yeah.
based on best, current practice of design.
Yeah.
Sidewalk widths, that's growing across the nation as
Yeah.
an example, right? So we try to apply that.
Yeah, bump outs. Okay, I got two more really quick. My understanding is that we're doing IPD quite a lot. Yes, no? I heard from the contractor that did the expo upgrades that it was great.
We have 3 projects.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is a lot for, like, when compared to other municipalities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's going well. It's bearing fruit.
Yes, absolutely. All 3 are trending positively with good performance metrics.
Okay, I have a question about, I take the point that we don't have as many unconstrained renewal dollars as we used to. Have we ever done an analysis that said, if we add back in the renewal part of Yellowhead and the renewal part of Terwillegar and the renewal part of other co-funded projects, where do we get back to in terms of roadway maintenance and renewal dollars as compared to yesteryear?
I don't think we've done that work. I could check with our colleagues in finance.
Yeah, I'm out of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tang?
Just a quick one, and asking on behalf of Councillor Stevenson, who can't be here. Wondering, just back to the theme of public communication and transparency, info sharing, that kind of stuff. Have we thought about a traffic disruption notification system similar to perhaps some of other contractors have done?
Caitlin, do you want to comment on that?
Could you just rephrase the question one more time, Councillor Tang? Thank
have
you.
we thought about a traffic disruption notification system
So internally, we have what's called a TDN, so it's a traffic disruption notification.
for the public?
For the public.
Similar to some of the mapping tools that we have.
Yeah, so we do have the disruption map where folks can go and reference it online. You would have to go and actually seek that information out on the City of Edmonton website. We have done some alternative ways where we have sent out notifications of service in areas for snow and ice being one of them, spring sweep. We've also done it in cases of microsurfacing where we're sending out text notifications.
Yeah.
But we have not explored looking at sending out broader TDNs or traffic disruption notices out to public.
So-
we do find, sorry, just to qualify that, we do find that in order for us to communicate or push communications out to people, they do have to sign up through that text, subscribe to
Yeah.
text service.
I understand Marigold has a good way of communicating some of these traffic disruptions.
That is correct, Councillor Tang, and I think when we look at projects like the LRT that are large enough that we require our contractors to have dedicated communication teams that are also focused on communicating construction, I think that's a benefit on something like that. I think we can always communicate more. I don't think you can over-communicate.
Yeah.
But in the case of something like the LRT projects, they are large enough that we can require our contractors to have dedicated teams for it, and that's what we do.
But can we not be sort of the central, right? Like if you're trying to do building Edmonton as a source of truth, can the city not have a bit of a platform for that kind of notification system?
City of Calgary has through the Waze app, have piloted this in terms of being able to provide updates on mapping based on traffic disruptions. It was something that they've put in as a pilot. We're working on, we've had discussions with them on what that looks like and seeing about how that could be potentially applicable in the City of Edmonton, but also around success rates. So one of the challenges of sending out communications, if we were to send out on every single traffic disruption, is some of those can only be, sometimes they're a 2-hour disruption and some of them are multi-month disruptions. So trying to find that balance.
Yeah. But you will look into it.
We are looking, so we're working closely with City of Calgary on the successes of what they've been doing with the Waze app and seeing how that works. They have not had it in place long enough to be able to give us this has worked or this hasn't worked, but it's something that we're engaging with them on.
Okay, because I think that would be something quite useful. I will say in my area, I know there's a lot of traffic disruption focused on downtown. In suburban development, I have 3 different developers closing roads for servicing work happening all at the same time. My office gets 3 separate memos. And when people write into us, we're essentially kind of trying to coordinate that communication between 3 separate entities, and that I find that really challenging. I have to say, and I'm like, there's no central platform to be like, these are all the roads that's gonna be closed for this reason, and this is the contact for, right? Like, so I can relate to why a need for that would be really critical, but glad we're looking into it. Thanks.
Thank you. At this time, if there's no further questions from committee members or colleagues, this report is received for information, but I do have a motion that I'll move at this time. So I'll move that administration incorporate into the infrastructure state and condition report an accounting of infrastructure assets acquired since the last report, including the quantity and type of infrastructure added, the associated replacement value, and a historical summary of the growth in quantity of infrastructure assets owned by the city going back as far as data allows. And I'll just take a brief moment to introduce. Really appreciated the conversation today. Appreciated the updates that we received on some of the more significant infrastructure projects that are underway in our city. Also appreciated some of the dialogue with administration and our speakers about the importance of long-term planning, renewal, sustainable funding, and just the importance of supporting a predictable and stable infrastructure outlook. So what I'm really getting at with this motion is to support a clearer line of sight as to how rapidly our inventory is growing year over year, from new roads and pathways to green spaces and parks. What I am hoping this will help us do is just gain a better idea of how quickly we're contributing to inventory growth. I know we've been working on enhancing our understanding of the full life cycle costs associated with our infrastructure and growth. And as our city continues to grow, we are continuing to add new infrastructure, new assets, each of which creates long-term obligations. And while we've been reporting on the condition and renewal needs of aging infrastructure, it would be complementary to have a clear picture of how quickly that inventory is expanding. So I think this motion just enhances that transparency by explicitly accounting for new infrastructure additions and providing a bit of a snapshot of our historical growth of our asset base over time. And I have connected with administration on this and understand that this information is already available and would be able to be accommodated within our existing reporting structure. So that is all. If there's any questions, happy to take them. If not, happy to take folks who would like to speak to this item. All right. If not, I will just take a moment to thank administration for all of the work that went into this update. Really appreciated the format that was in front of us today. I thought it gave a really clear picture of more of those sort of public interest projects, ones that I get questions about fairly regularly. So it's a really good opportunity for us to be able to have dialogue, be able to ask questions, but also be able to take information back to the folks that we represent. I know there was some discussion around the Building Edmonton platform, and I have to say I use it regularly. I do find that it's quite a good tool for communicating the breadth and scope of projects that are happening citywide in our neighborhoods. And really pleased with the speakers who were able to take some time to be with us today. Just want to thank you for bringing your perspectives to the table, and it's really great to hear about the productive working relationship that our industry partners have with the city and the team that's in front of us today. So looking forward to future updates like this one, and what a great kickoff to the first Infrastructure Committee. Thank you so much. And please vote.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Jens. We have a vote.
Please display the vote. That is carried. Thank you so much. At this time, we're going to move on to item 3.4, Capital Infrastructure Program Delivery Model Overview.
Okay, in the interest of time, and I thank you for moving this, we have a presentation, but it is similar to the report itself, so we're happy to go straight to questions. It's not a really long one, but that gives us the full time with Jason still here to go over questions. So it's committee's discretion, but we're happy to go right to questions.
Yeah, Councillor Carmel, you'd selected this. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. and also in the interest of time, I have a motion to put on the floor in response to this, if that's okay. I'm not trying to jump the gun on anybody. I put it in the chat, and so perhaps Ms. Jacobson can pull it out of there.
We are pulling it up right now, yes.
So, how shall I introduce this? The report talks a lot about different delivery strategies, I'm going to say, contracting strategies. We talked a little bit about integrated project delivery a little earlier, IPD. We've heard mention of some of the other contracting strategies. And in general terms, those speak to strategies that are used to deliver a project once a project has been effectively scoped and at least, reach some level of preliminary design. Sometimes it's a full design and then a hard tender. Sometimes it's a collaborative approach. But there's an opportunity to back up that a little bit. And before we actually get to the crafting of the scope of a particular project, to sort of gaze around the location of that project and see what other opportunities might be drawn into that project. If more land were made available, what more could be done? Are there complementary uses to a particular building? Is there more or a greater number of amenities that could be added, and we would get the benefit of what is the word I'm looking for? Of the collaborative costs or the economy of scale that we would get doing more than one thing at one time. And furthermore, is there an opportunity to engage our private sector to help us scheme and dream and think a little bit about the other opportunities that might surround a particular project? And so there's, I've had a couple of conversations with a number of contractors about different places. And I sort of brought this up earlier this year with respect to a space that is adjacent to the Terwilliger Rec Center, where we might collaborate with the private sector, deliver some amount of housing, perhaps an amenity like a library, some amount of commercial development, and bundle all that into a different kind of partnership or agreement with the private sector. Just using that as an example, not necessarily as a particular thing. I appreciate I got ahead of others when I brought that concept up. So in that time, Councillor Tang and I have had a number of really productive conversations with administration and with some of the leaders in our development community about this concept. And so this motion represents that concept, that we look around for those opportunities. What are we thinking of building in terms of our capital plan going forward? What land do we have available? And where do those, perhaps, those two lists or those two sets of opportunities meet? And then let's go out to our private sector partners and see what they see as opportunities in those places or around those projects. And then if we can create a fair process whereby we receive those expressions of interest or those concepts or those ideas, we might be able to tease out a few things that are really kind of cool and become, have a whole greater than the sum of the parts aspect to this. So that is what this motion is aimed at. Thank you. I was saying all that while waiting for it to come up. So I'll read in the motion. My motion is such that Administration 1, review priority capital investments in consideration of currently available infrastructure growth plans as well as city land holdings, and report back with a recommendation on potential future unfunded capital investments that may be suitable for collaboration with private investment, due date Q4 of 2025. And then part 2, administration conduct a request for expressions of interest, an RFEOI, to solicit market interest for any land holdings or capital investments identified as part of part 1, and provide a report on the evaluation of RFEOI submissions received, including any potential constraints, challenges, and alignment with the growth of the city services and other city building objectives, with a due date of Q2 2026. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? So, Councillor Tang.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you for this report. And I thank you for this motion as well. I recognize when I first made this motion, I think some of the example I had in my head in the ward, I think speaks to probably broader than just capital project delivery. And I appreciate that you went away, you answered the question, but do you recognize it's bigger than just the delivery model, and what kind of conversations internally have you had beyond just infrastructure?
Yes, and I think that's the confusion on our parts in terms of like the nomenclature used and the specific reference to alliance, and we've already heard that today from a couple of the industry speakers that were here, and their understanding of what alliance is and how that word has some very specific meaning in terms of how the construction industry packages and works with public owners on these collaborative type of delivery models. So yeah, we've certainly taken that focus now. This motion represents, I think, what a better look at what you're looking for in terms of how the city more proactively scans our needs for infrastructure growth, along with and in collaboration with the private sector to see whether or not there's areas of mutual interest and desire for co-development or co-investment and code outcomes. And I think that's in reviewing that internally with other departments as well, we have a pretty good appreciation of what it is you're looking for.
Yeah, and I guess what departments have you been kind of talking with?
So we don't have a specific area that really looks into this. This really is a team effort. So we've had to leverage the insights from our urban planning and environment group, as they are the group that leads a lot of the initiatives supporting our city plan and the city planning building initiatives. Also our financial and corporate services, so just from a budgeting and finance perspective, in terms of the eligibility of how this work would fit, and then also procurement, recognizing that all this needs to be done in a fair and transparent way. And then as well as our land corporate properties group that also stewards a lot of our land holdings, and recognizing that they have their own discrete processes around how they administer and manage those assets as well. So it's required a bit of a team effort to get to this point, and we think this will hopefully get you the results or the response that you're looking for.
And that's not typically how we, I guess, think about some of the capital project delivery.
No, some of the more recent examples of trying to think, like obviously in a very different scale, but you think about the partnership that the city had with Oilers Entertainment Group and how that manifests the ICE district. It's very similar, a lot different scale, a lot higher, a lot bigger. And then obviously in terms of how the LRT planning was done and the notion of transit-oriented developments and how like certain air rights over like LRT stations and the integration of CRUs in our rec centers, like those are all kind of mini versions of this. But this creates maybe some more formal clarity around moving into the next 4-year capital plan, how we might be able to identify these in advance before we start picking and assigning and allocating funding as part of the capital budget.
Yeah, and I recognize like a few things here have to line up. So when I guess on the second part here, suppose that there is an opportunity identified, and I recognize, that we gotta have a land holding, that it aligns with some of our capital project priorities. Suppose when things do line up and you put this call out, we just want to see what is the market interest for that partnership. There could be none, right? But I've heard a lot of folks talk about, we should be sharing risk more, involve the contractors even earlier, plan more holistically. So this really just kind of gets us to see like what's the interest out there.
Yeah, and it flushes out in a very public and transparent way with equal opportunity to anyone involved to be able to respond to it.
Great. I have maybe a couple other questions, and I'm happy to speak to this. I'll come back. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe just to understand the interplay between part 1 and part 2, I guess as it's currently read, there's a sequencing here. And I guess to administration, would there be, for part 1, there would be a report back with recommendations. Would that be a decision point around proceeding to point 2? I'm just trying to understand the...
Yeah, our hope would come back with a recommendation. I think the big thing that we want to capture here is some consensus with council around what those priorities are. We don't want this to be seen as queue jumping the capital budget process or anything like that, recognizing you have a big decision point next year leading into the next 4-year budget. So we need to get some consensus on what we think are priorities, both collectively, internally, as well as yourself with the public. And then from that, once we land on that decision, now we have something to kind of narrow the focus. We don't want to go to the market with something so vague, so open, that we really get a poor response, quite bluntly. And we have one of the more recent examples where we did an RF EOI was Lewis Farms, and it was pretty vague, and we got a very varied response. And I think the better we're able to narrow our focus and narrow our interest, the better the private market can respond to it.
And also like aligning it with what our priorities would be. So looking for that overlap where there might be those landholding opportunities combined with something that we know is close to where we'd want to go also. So that's part of the review.
Right, and I understand all that. I guess I'm wondering if part 2 is presupposing a conversation that needs to be had in part 1 when those recommendations come back, that's all.
It could be. I think council could redirect depending what the outcome is of point 1, and we could continue with point 2. So I guess theoretically, part 2 could be made as an outcome of part 1, or they could make them both and you could adjust. I think like from a governance perspective, either would be okay, but either would do the same thing. And I'm looking at the mover too. Like, I mean, it could be either way.
Go ahead.
Well, my read of it is that not much can happen on part 2 before the work on part 1 is complete. So, you know, if this shows intent, I would suppose, you know, if part 1 is, you know, reasonably successful and is vetted by council, that part 2 follows. So it sort of sets the plan. But if the outcome is out of part 1 is that there's nothing really viable, then, you know, part 2 dies at that point. Perhaps somebody has to make a note in a diary to say, okay, we're not doing part 2 because there's nothing to do. But I would think one would flow from the other.
Right, and just for sort of continuity, maybe just some language around pending part 1 or something like that.
Sure,
just
yeah.
to
All that's friendly. Yeah,
Yeah.
if you want to throw in a pending outcomes, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, fine by me. Fine by me. Yeah.
Would that be friendly with committee members? Okay, I'm not hearing anyone. Maybe just to the clerk, if we could just find a way to get some wording in there around pending, just to ensure that the sequencing of those is clear.
So the work on part 2 would not start until the report back is provided after part 1.
Yeah, pending a discussion and decision around part 1.
So Nancy, maybe the start of the sentence before administration would be pending a positive outcome from the first part.
Thank you. Councillor Rutherford.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to raise my hand. I was just unmuting. I guess just to defer to committee, but I think based on that conversation, I don't know why 2 wouldn't just be struck out and be kept as a motion to make at the time when that report comes back. That's seems to be a little bit more clean. And I guess to administration, can you walk me through, like, I am seeing this motion for the first time, really trying to understand what it means. So, you know, we do have priorities. We actually had a report that came back and identified the 4 key criteria for any growth projects, right? So they're like safety related, major opens the opportunity for investment, yada, yada, right? There was 4. Like, we already know the priorities for growth.
I would say, Councillor, yes, we have a process, and you've described some of it, and we'll be doing the same thing for the next 4-year budget cycle. I would say that what this does, it takes a deeper look at our land holdings combined with our own infrastructure beyond just what land we may need for our own purposes to see if there's a potential opportunity to do the joint or the shared opportunity beyond just our projects. But point 1 is to align exactly with what you're saying and see if there's an opportunity beyond just our priorities.
So can you give me an example of that in like pragmatic terms? Like, are we talking about like, we wouldn't be talking about fire halls per se, but we would be talking about artificial turf projects. Like, what are we talking about here? Or is it all up for discussion, anything growth?
Well, I think right now that's part of why we need to do this work as part one, is to kind of flush that out a little bit. And as I mentioned, we don't want to be seen as kind of queue jumping, but I think the priorities that have been shared with council are based on a very fiscally constrained environment. So this starts to kind of stretch the limits of those boundaries to say, are there aspects of our capital plan that maybe won't compete for capital investments internally, but perhaps maybe create opportunities through some kind of catalytic effect through private investment. So it is a little bit different, and this is why it's a little complicated, requires a lot of department support and participation, but it is a non-binding process to be able to do this, and it's really just about discovering. Yeah.
So, and I don't know what's happening with my time because I don't think I've been on for 5 minutes. I don't.
No, your time's been a little wonky. You're good. Keep going.
I don't know how much time I have left, but like, I guess number one, sure, it's worth exploring to some extent. But when we talk about land holdings, like, what do you mean? So, like, for example, we're holding land in Cumberland for a future fire hall. What does that look like in terms of the land holdings piece of that first portion of the recommendation?
Yeah, to
Or
extrapolate.
the motion?
Yeah, to extrapolate that a little further, there's a case study in, and it may not. So the example I'll provide in Calgary, our leadership team meets with the city of Calgary semi-regularly, and one of the places that we toured was a fire station that included a community space and then an affordable housing complex attached to it. So a very unique partnership where you've got a housing group that's got access to capital through federal grants. So maybe it's not completely private, but completely separate entity from the city of Edmonton. So basically they joined their financial resources, pooled them together, created one project instead of 3 separate ones to be able to support one project. And I don't know if that would have manifested savings on the fire station itself, but I think it created some efficiencies in terms of trying to achieve all 3 of their outcomes. I don't know if that's a good example.
It achieves the outcome, so it gets us further in growth, but that could actually extend project timelines, because I think that was exactly part of the discussion that happened with Wellington.
And that's the trade-off I think that we were trying to capture with part 2, is then you have to evaluate these submissions, understand what the constraints are, challenges, and how that aligns with our own needs and our own wants for the growth of city services and city building objectives.
Okay, I'll leave it there for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tang.
I guess just on maybe to administration, I guess you could have proposed just, and thank you for some of the recommendations in the wording for this motion, but you could have proposed just one. But in my mind, part 2 kind of signals some intent and provides a bit of the context for why number 1. Particularly since we're in a year that will see some transition, it kind of lays that foundation for the future conversation. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree exactly. I think we're talking about partnership, and we need to set tone and intent, and we have to go out and check from the other side if there's interest. Yeah. And so this helps set that tone of how that interest could play out.
So I would urge committee to consider keeping that part 2. And then questions on, I'm thinking this is more suitable for a growth project. Would you say?
Yes. Yeah, because it would. I was just going to say, if you get to a state of renewal where you're rebuilding it, in effect,
that would not make
sense.
Anyway,
so,
this is about kind of starting fresh pretty early on.
I would agree.
And we have no money for growth. I don't see how.
Yeah, council has set tone that we really need to explore. We know the gap on renewal, and that's first and foremost where we need to look, and that could put further restraint on growth, yes.
Okay, and then just to David Johnson's comments earlier, that even just in the report, a lot of the methodology you had outlined are still relatively new to municipalities. Would you say?
Correct, yeah. Some are newer than others, but we've done a lot to expand our toolbox, so to speak, in the last 10 years. And
then would you say sort of what we're talking about here today is really we're talking about a new tool in the toolbox that maybe looks like a lot of but there's nuances and, risk sharing levels. That's not quite the same thing as an IPD, that's not quite the same thing as P3, but thinking more holistically about projects that could achieve multiple aims. And in the process, I think Jason put it really well, like how does it deliver more efficiently, et cetera.
Yeah, I would say this takes us beyond even the model delivery method to look for opportunities together.
Yeah.
If we get something going through the RFEOI, we would still look at how we would want to deliver that within the rest of all of that we presented in the report, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so thinking about opportunities more broadly, because I think one of the things I've kind of struggled with our capital project is that we're very, one footprint at a time. One project at a time, and we have so many things going on. Sometimes I don't even know, like how does this align with other developments in the area? Are we even missing out when we say, well, because we're not prioritizing growth, we're going to set this aside and focus on, like, I don't know, road renewal. But in the meantime, let's say other orders of government is moving forward on certain projects, and we're not necessarily aligning some of those opportunities. Not to say that there's cost saving, but it makes me wonder about opportunities missed too.
Well, looking back, like I think we have continued to kind of advance some of this work, although we've done it within the scope of what we have control over, which is our municipal services. So when I think of some of the work that happened 10 years ago with some of our rec centers, we used to just build a rec center.
Mm-hmm.
Now we build a rec center and a library. Now we build a rec center, a library, and an academic center.
And we're doing it all.
Right. And so we are taking a more centralized focus, an integrated planning focus, hence the name of the department. But the idea to be able to pool those thinkings all in one area and align all those things, to be able to consider those things and capture those earlier on in the value chain,
right,
before you've pulled the trigger on construction, and then you find out you're building a library just after you started construction on a rec center.
Yeah.
We don't want to do that.
Yeah. Did you want to add anything, Craig?
No, I was just going to say another example where we do, stretch working in collaboration would be even the work we do with EPCOR on low impact development, where we're adding amenities into our road projects for more surface water storage.
Mm-hmm.
EPCOR is funding those. They have their own funding mechanisms, and I know they're kind of us, but they're separate too. So there's where we work together, pool our funds, and expand our projects to meet multiple needs.
And you pool the risk too.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jans?
Yeah, I'm thinking about this as well too in the first one, and I'm not sure. I guess I'll ask admin whether it's necessary to have a friendly amendment or not, but when I read the unfunded capital investments that may be suitable for collaboration with private, I was going to say public or private or partner interest, something around there. I'm thinking about, like, at South Campus, we have the government of Alberta doing some things. We have the University of Alberta doing some things. We have other entities at Blatchford. We have NATE at others. Like, in my mind, I envision we kind of do an inventory. We do our spring cleaning. Then we go to our partner public agencies and others and say what's coming here, because there's still big chunks of land around many of our stations that could be affordable housing or other entities that the government of Alberta has enormous amounts of land. And so I'm wondering, is there a way that before we go to the market, is there a way we have another checkpoint in there too? And maybe it's redundant, maybe you already do this, even the school boards.
Yeah, I think I'd be surprised if we don't do this already. I mean, I think of, like, the Twin Arenas, the Saville system, or Saville Sports Center and stuff like that, the partnerships that we have with some of the post-secondaries. And then I think even the school boards, I was thinking one member of the team here sent me Ann Anderson in school, and the work that we did to collaborate with them with the rec center.
Yeah, we did Saville, and then Savita's added hundreds of units of affordable housing. The Edmonton Public School Board and the GOA have invested in making Alberta School for the Deaf. They totally redone the guts. That school will be here for years. Yeah. But there's still enormous pockets of land in the area that are either U of A owned or GOA owned, that are right beside a train station, that are prime, that whether they were sold for market or sold, I don't know, but I guess I'm looking for a kind of a intermediate checkpoint, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would say I'll give my opinion, but happy to have the mover do the same. I think a lot of those mechanisms are at play in other ways already, as Jason said. When we're talking about provincial lands, our lands, or school board, we have a lot of joint use agreements with school boards and things, so we're already in that space. So I think we're covered that way.
But would this force a conversation with them and maybe light a fire under them a little bit to get off some of their land holdings? Because I don't know that they feel the same urgency we do to be in politic.
Right, and I think the intent, if I understand the mover's intent here, was really focus on that private dimension and see where that takes us. But Councillor Cromwell, I'll let you jump in.
I am of the firm opinion we're not going to be able to do very much by ourselves, just as Councillor Tang just said. So I'm agnostic who the partners are. So if we replace the words private investment with public and or private partners, I'm happy with that.
Partner interest, yeah.
I have no concerns.
So are
with
we.
that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So when this comes back, I'd welcome a response letter from Alberta Infrastructure, or whoever it is, that they are excited about what we're doing. So thank you.
Great, thank you. So maybe we can just get the slightly amended friendly wording up there. And not seeing any further questions at this time, is there anyone who would like to speak to this item? Councillor Tang.
Great, thank you very much. And I really appreciate all the work and conversation the administration did in trying to respond to the initial motion I had. And that was really kind of the intent, is to open up a bit of a conversation about this. And I apologize for some of the language. I'm not an engineer, so I don't really know all the approaches. So I take advice from the experts who do this. But I actually thought, regardless of the intent, I thought the report answered the question well, and you outlined a number of things that was helpful for my learning. But as we discussed, that this motion is bigger than just the delivery model we're talking about, and it's really about reimagining the way we build, the way we invest in big projects, and the way we can be proactive to allow for co-development, investment, co-investment, and partnership. And I think maybe that didn't really click for me until I toured the Millwoods Covenant Wellness Center, built by the Covenant Health Foundation. And $100 million for a medical facility during a high inflation time, and came in under budget, and is about to go into operation this fall. And I asked a lot of questions around the capital side of things, and what did they do? How was it delivered? Why is it different? And do we do this? We're currently facing a huge financial constraint at the city. We have, after the 4-year budget, I don't foresee how, in the coming years, how we're ever going to grow our growth project inventory, given the huge renewal deficit that we have. And I am open to learning about different methodologies that we could be trying and exploring. And that's really what I think the motion on the table allows us to do. And so we've always had, we have lots of big capital projects that has, private partners involved, or, working with different nonprofit, like housing, for example, or public partners. I just don't see a future where we can deliver on every capital project on our own. I think we have done a lot, but we're just not in a financial position to do that. And so if there is something worth exploring, I am supportive of that. I also, I know we have a pretty big conversation coming up this afternoon about what are some of the cost drivers. And one of the things that I guess spoke to me about, this example in Millwoods that I visited is, thinking about how we interpret some of those policies. When we are focusing so much on the footprint of a particular building, I think we lose sight of what else is going on around it for that more holistic, I guess, implementation of an idea. I actually think, I think we're going to hear lots of speakers and to talk about the research in particular on those cost drivers, including climate resilience. And I recognize in that next report, it's a pretty big one. But what I thought was interesting about the Millwoods example was that in this case, they were not so much using the language of climate resilience, but sustainability of principles incorporated through connections with active transportation on that road, for example, through a transit station, landscaping was intentionally thought out, to tree planting, all of that as a whole can get to the project to whether it's net zero or emission reduction. I think I need to be fact-checked on some of those pieces, but those are some of my understanding of the project, and that's what piqued my interest, is around a holistic delivery of capital project. So, you know, I think it's worth exploring and thinking about how we deliver on growth projects in the coming years. You know, when I think about the needs in Ward Garter Hill that I represent, I hear constantly from residents about the need for high school. We need a new rec center because the ones around us, which is their go-to in their catchment, are pretty overwhelmed already because they're seeing growth as well. Libraries in the same way, and I just don't foresee how we can even deliver on those kinds of demand without thinking outside the box a little bit, and I think this allows us to do that. I'm interested in what comes back. It could be nothing. I'll be honest, like, it could be nothing. It could be that the time isn't right. We're all feeling, you know, a lot of the cost challenges, public or private. And, you know, we can talk about, you know, the good practices out there, but maybe the opportunity, it just isn't there. So that's also, you know, I think I just want to see what's out there, and I think you've laid the foundation to do that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Just looking at the time, I'll move that we extend to finish this item, just with unanimous consent. Can we do that? Yes, seeing nods, great. Councillor Paquette, go ahead. Councillor Paquette, are you online?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay, my connection isn't the greatest, so thank you. So this is a good motion. You know, I think that taking a look at the Calgary example, you know, it's a little frustrating. I wish we were leading the way, but we'll take notes wherever we can get them. So as stated, you know, this is something that we're not unused to. Just in my ward alone, with that the Red Center with the academic aspect of it attached, along with the library, and if we can expand that concept, that's great. I think we should do that. And just on a personal note, in my personal life, when there's been hard times, I haven't enjoyed those hard times. But it's in those moments when you start thinking about things in a new way, how you can approach things differently. And I think that's one of the benefits that we should look at in these difficult fiscal times at the city. And so motions like this make a lot of sense, and there will be more coming and more. And then there have been initiatives that have come out over the past couple of years from council and from administration that takes advantage of the fact that we're constrained. You know, you find new ways to grow new muscles. So I think that one word of caution that I heard from administration, not super clearly stated, but I think it's there, is that these kinds of partnerships could, on a percentage basis, reduce costs or operating costs, which is good. We want that. But I guess the caution would be like, don't expect when this report comes back to be like a world changer. More, it will be like a little bit more efficiencies. And you know what? I think that that's great, and that's exactly what we should be looking for. And I think that's something that we should be embracing. So, yeah, thanks to the mover, and thanks to administration for the input and the work as well behind the scenes to get this motion ready for committee. And I recommend that this passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Carmel to close.
Great, thank you. I think that part two of this motion is really key because it does speak to intent or a path. And a few examples come to mind. And I know these examples because they're in my ward. So, you know, at the south end of Terwilliger Drive, where the bus lanes end, we need a transit center. The city owns land for a transit center, But the estimated cost is roughly $30 million, and we don't have $30 million to build it. That transit center would feed those bus lanes, would also feed a crosstown route that goes to the coming LRT station in Heritage Valley. That's a key transit center. It's right next to private land that is designated for high-density multi-unit housing. There is a prime opportunity for a private sector partner to build both the transit center and the housing, and perhaps more housing than they can put on their own land, and add a few things around it to make the financial model work. These might not be world-beater things, but I actually believe that in the opposite. I think we're going to have so many of these opportunities come to us that it's going to really stretch our imagination. I think we're inviting partners in to bring us their imagination and bring us, some of their priorities and some of the things that they would like to see that allows for collaboration, that allows for a whole that is greater than the sum of the parts. I know the examples in my ward. I've mentioned the one around Terwillegar Rec Center numerous times. There's a recreation center between two high schools planned for Glenridding. There's at least 2 transit centers in the ward I represent that are planned but are not funded and are that are not on our radar. And I know that every one of my colleagues, when they start thinking about it, can identify similar priorities in their ward. Amenities that their wards need, amenities that are adjacent to privately held land or land held by another order of government. This is just ripe for the next level planning and collaboration and the creation of hubs that become community hubs, of activation of spaces. We talk about safety in transit centers. Imagine a transit center that has got a little bit of commercial activity that is surrounded by the housing of the people that are actually using that space. I think that there's so much potential for this, and by inviting people in to help us with the needs that, frankly, we're not going to be able to finance for a while, I think is really going to be an interesting thing. My intent, if this passes, is to go out and find those spots beyond the ones that I've just listed and really encourage the surrounding landowners and amenity owners and building owners to think about what they can add to this, to this motion or to this list or to this grouping of things. And I really strongly encourage my colleagues to do the same. This list doesn't have to be, 1 or 3 items long. It'd be great if it was 100 items long, and that there's some real interesting opportunities in front of us to help, build a much better city and a much greater city. So really strongly encourage my colleagues to support this.
Thank you. Please vote.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Jans. We have all the votes.
Display the vote. That's carried. Okay, thank you. So that brings us to our noon break here. Maybe just to the clerk, we're going to be coming back around 2:30.
We don't know exactly. We'll come back when Audit Selection Committee adjourns. For the public speakers, we will send them an email when Audit Selection Committee adjourns, and there'll be approximately 15 to 30 minutes after that we will reconvene here.
What about the rest of us?
We will notify you by chat when Audit Selection Committee adjourns.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We'll see you after the break.